Dobre večer to everyone. I want to thank Daniel for his introductory remarks, and I want to say great minds think alike, because I'm going to be echoing some of the themes that Daniel has identified. I also want to thank Vladka Vodovova, AMO's director, for organizing this event, the entire Association for International Affairs for the opportunity to speak to you. I also want to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for making this marvelous space available to us tonight. I can't think of a better venue in which to have our conversation. In a few weeks, I will travel to Washington to stand with representatives of your government at the seat of my government for a momentous occasion, the dedication of a bust of Václav Havel in the U.S. Capitol building. And Havel will join a very exclusive club as one of a tiny number of non-Americans, among them Winston Churchill, who has been honored in that way. But we will not only be commemorating Václav Havel, we will, in that ceremony, be marking the 25th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution, which inspired champions of freedom and democracy around the world. And fundamentally, we will be celebrating something else, the extraordinary bond between the Czech Republic and the United States. And that special bond is based at least as much on shared values as on pragmatic interests. Have asked whether that special bond is still useful, and others have questioned whether support for human rights and democracy should have a role in foreign policy. So tonight, 25 years after the Velvet Revolution, in this complicated second decade of the 21st century, at a time when the world seems to be on fire, tonight I want to talk to you about the strength and importance of our special relationship, and I want to speak in defense of idealism and principle as forces to guide national priorities. At the threshold, I want to take stock of where we are today. And it is a good place, make no mistake. When Americans look at the Czech Republic, we see a country that in a very short time has vaulted into the top tier of Western allies. We see a vibrant democracy in the center of Europe, with a strong export-based economy, an active civil society, an active NGO community, and an energetic free press. We see a cultural heavyweight that makes lasting impact in literature, film, and music. And we see an important NATO partner contributing troops and expertise to critical missions in Mali, the Sinai, and in Afghanistan, where recently a number of Czech soldiers paid the ultimate price to protect others' liberty. But perhaps most importantly, when Americans, and I would say most people around the world, look at the Czech Republic, we see a country that is a thought leader on issues about which we care deeply: democracy and human rights. The Czech Republic is a country with which we share a particular view of the world, and it is a view in which, of the world in which ideas matter, principles matter, and the best is always possible. But now we find ourselves at a crossroads. For some, it has become fashionable to view American idealism cynically. And that same impulse leads some to argue that a relatively small country in the center of Europe should not try to play an outsized role in promoting democracy and human rights. And some wonder about the value of a special relationship between our countries. But I'm here to say that those who built that special bond understood its power very well. 96 years ago this week, a democratic Czechoslovakia was born, based on the principles of freedom and self-determination, and thanks to the good work of Presidents Wilson and Masaryk. And my own family flourished in that golden age of the First Republic. My grandparents spoke of that time and that partnership long after they had built a new life in the United States. Then when darkness spread across Europe, the United States fought fascism in defense of values and ideals, not territory. During the Cold War, the United States was a stalwart supporter of freedom and dissidence, not just for geopolitical reasons, but for moral ones. And the United States drew lines, using military power when necessary to contain the Soviet Union. Why? Because its ideology was a threat to liberty and to human dignity. The United States used its power to fight for principles. And during those difficult years, the Czechs inspired and taught us about the power of peaceful advocacy for democracy and basic rights. The Prague Spring, Charter 77, those were examples of remarkable courage, and both were beacons that played a greater role in undermining the Iron Curtain than many people today realize. And then, of course, came the Velvet Revolution, in which students, actors, poets, and then ordinary workers showed their strength and their moral authority. They shook their keys to say goodbye to a regime that had no legitimacy. So the walls came down and iron curtains lifted, and our two nations built a partnership based on shared values and mutual interests. And your President Havel, whom we will honor next month, then had an opportunity to put theory into practice. So now, I don't want to suggest that I know as much about those years as do you, who lived them. But I have been reading President Havel's speeches and statements about values in foreign policy in light of the discussions that have been going on recently about that topic. And Havel's approach when he was in power should not be oversimplified, and it should not be caricatured. Havel was by no means a naive purist. Instead, he wrote that a person who is sure of the values he believes in and struggles for is usually able to recognize the degree of compromise permissible in the practical application of his ideals. So he wasn't a naive purist who said we will never get our hands dirty, nor did Havel automatically reject engaging with or doing business with nations or leaders who were less than perfect. But what was non-negotiable, and what I will argue today should remain non-negotiable, was the imperative to speak out about political prisoners, about politics, and about progress when we see it. So I would say to you today, do not underestimate the extent to which the Czech Republic is a powerful and natural proponent for democratic values. And one reason is the moral authority and the moral debt conferred by that history that I just described. Right? At least 3 times Czechoslovakia was helped from the outside in its creation in 1918, in its liberation in 1945, and in the support that was given to dissidents during the period prior to the Velvet Revolution of 1989. But on the other hand, some of the most tragic moments of Czech modern history occurred precisely when the world turned away. In Munich in 1938, to some extent at the Yalta Conference in 1945, and in 1968 during the Warsaw Pact invasion. These lessons are lessons that the Czech Republic can use to help others avoid the same fate. And in fact, by helping others, the Czech Republic helps itself. For only a stable international system based on the rule of law and populated by strong democracies, only in a system such as that can the prosperity and peaceful development and security of a small country like the Czech Republic be guaranteed. The United States has long recognized that the Czech Republic can be particularly effective in supporting democracy and human rights because its smooth transition to democracy gives the Czech Republic expertise, credibility, and stature. Because of the unique history of the Czech Republic, countries in transition do not view it as a potential threat, but rather as a partner. Now, this reservoir of international respect and moral authority are valuable assets that never go out of style. Look, the United States, too, while far from perfect, has always been guided by a moral compass which says, to paraphrase our Declaration, of independence, that all people are created equal, that all have fundamental universal rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and that governments exist for the purpose of securing those rights and only gain their authority from the consent of those who they govern. Now, Daniel spoke earlier about how the world seems to have turned upside down in the last few months. I described it as if the world is on fire. And I would say now even more, given the complex geopolitical landscape that we're confronting, we need the clarity that our shared values provide. And I believe that building on that foundation, our two countries are meeting serious challenges together and must continue to do so going forward. So I want to talk very briefly about a few of those challenges: Russia, the Middle East, commerce and trade, and good governance.